Okay, let's dive into one of the most fascinating concepts in this whole mythos, the strategic paradox. It's the story of a god who literally rebuilt a universe, not out of some grand vision for progress, but to hide a single, deeply human flaw. And this line, this right here, says it all. The entire universe he created is nothing more than a prison, and it's a prison built to the exact size and shape of his own insecurity. It's just a tragedy on a galactic scale. So that's the real question, isn't it? What happens when a being with infinite power builds a fortress of logic and steel, all just to contain a ghost that lives inside his own head? We're going to find out. All right, first up, the God's perfect blueprint. Let's take a look at how this all got started, with the absolute transformation of an entire world from wild, fiery chaos into something else. So imagine this. The uncanny god looks at a world teeming with life, jagged obsidian peaks, winding rivers of lava, all this organic, fiery chaos. And he doesn't see beauty. He sees a messy equation that needs to be solved. So he levels it, all of it, replaces it with cold, geometric monoliths and these rigid avenues of necessity. And let's be super clear, this wasn't about building a better world. The goal was to erase what he called the curved lines of human whim. Choice, unpredictability, passion. All of it had to be replaced by the sterile, straight lines of absolute calculation. But you gotta ask, why? Why go to such an insane extreme? Well, that brings us to the heart of the matter, to this idea of an architecture of insecurity. It's all about the ghost in his machine. It all comes down to one person. The Golden Shepherd. This was his ancient nemesis, someone so effortlessly brilliant, so powerful without even trying, that his very existence made the uncanny god's genius feel, as the text says, like a candle guttering in a hurricane. And here's the twist. The real enemy wasn't the Golden Shepherd himself, but the memory of him. The whispering ghost is that internal echo, that constant nagging feeling of being less than. It's the one rounding error his perfect logic could never, ever erase. And this is where it all clicks into place. You can literally map his psychological flaws onto his architecture. He feels small, so he builds these immense calculus spires, rising up like the silver spears of the Tuatha De Danann. He fears human choice, so he creates the rigid avenues of necessity. The entire universe is just a massive physical defense mechanism against his own feelings. So how do you police a perfect, sterile universe? Well, you don't use armies. No, this god summoned 3 titans, 3 living equations, straight from the weeping steel of the abyss to enforce his will. Meet the Obsidian Knights. These 3 aren't just soldiers, they're functions, each designed to systematically hunt down and eliminate any trace of inefficiency, or what we might call the human spirit. First up, you've got the Obsidian Glider. His job is to sever. He races along those perfectly straight avenues, fast as the hounds of the Tuatha De Danann, and his entire purpose is to cut off any curved lines, any action that isn't a predictable, calculated vector. Then there's the Orichalcum Wizard. His job is to filter. Using magic that feels a lot like a Slavic zmei, he takes all that messy friction of human emotion, agony, passion, joy, and literally refines it into programmable light. He harvests despair and turns it into fuel for the state. And finally, Solaris. His job is to incinerate. Like a winter goddess, a Marzana, his purpose is to bring the killing frost of logic to any heart that dares to dream. He shatters hope, breaking it down into cold, manageable fragments. So what's the end result for everyone living there? It's called the numbness of the solved. People aren't people anymore. They're just cogs in a machine. Their despair is literally harvested as kinetic energy to keep the whole clockwork hell running. Now, all of this builds to what has to be the most tragic, most ironic expression of this god's obsession. It's something called the armor of irony. And it all comes back to this question. What if getting everything you ever wanted, all the power in the universe, doesn't free you? What if it just chains you even tighter to the thing that broke you in the first place? In what is just the most incredible act of cosmic spite, he takes the sigil of his nemesis, the Golden Shepherd, and carves it onto his own armor. He decides to wear the symbol of the one person he could never beat. And that's the ultimate failure right there. He thinks he's mocking his enemy, showing that he's moved past it, but all he's really doing is tethering himself to that trauma forever. He hasn't escaped his obsession, he's literally wearing it. And so we come to the final, tragic endgame, the unsolvable ghost, a perfect prison, built for an audience of one. His fate is something called eternal recurrence. Think about it. He has the power to destroy galaxies with a thought, but he's an eternal slave to a memory. He stripped all the poetry from the universe, and all he found was a cold, empty equation he could never solve. I mean, he did it. He achieved a level of power and control that is genuinely unimaginable. He seized the throne of the stars. But all that intellect, all that power, could never recalculate the one variable that mattered. It couldn't fix a heart that, after all was said and done, still felt less than. That's the paradox. And that's the thought this whole story leaves us with. Can any fortress we build, no matter how big or impressive, ever truly imprison the ghost of our own ego? It's a question that echoes from his empty throne room right down into our own lives.